She was my grandbaby, and she was the sweetest, kindest, smartest, most full of life little girl that I've ever met in my life. She had her entire life ahead of her.
Police say until today they haven't spoken to Gonzalez, who is legally a minor, but is now being tried as an adult.
We haven't been able to speak with him, so we haven't gotten his story. But from what witnesses have told us, he played a big part in it.
I don't understand how anybody could ever hurt a child. It just makes no sense to me. This is like a nightmare. Nobody's prepared to bury their child ever, especially at the age of 4.
To see a lot of bruising on the child, especially in the neck area. Also human bite marks, which were found to have come from the mother's boyfriend, who is 16 years old.
Tonight, a family is devastated over the loss of their 4-year-old girl after she was found unresponsive Friday and later died.
Hello everyone and welcome. As an experienced crime analyst and storyteller, I share real-life cases with the goal of raising awareness, promoting safety, and helping our community learn valuable lessons about prevention. Today we will take a look at the case of Octavia Aspen Aquino and explore the latest developments. It was supposed to be just another summer morning, with sunlight spilling across the floor of a quiet apartment in Evansville, Indiana. But on June 14, 2024, that calm was violently shattered. A roommate walked into the living room and froze, a chill of wrongness hanging in the air. On a mattress lay 4-year-old Octavia Aspen Aquino, her small body terrifyingly still. Beside her sat 16-year-old Christian Gonzalez, a person she knew, a person who had been living there for weeks, now watching without urgency, without alarm. In that moment, a storm of questions began to brew. How did this happen? Why did no one act sooner? And how were so many warning signs missed? By nightfall, detectives would uncover more than just a single tragic event. They would piece together a long chain of poor choices, oversights, and systemic failures. Each link allowed a person who was trusted to become the greatest threat. The truth would reveal that this was not merely the loss of a child, but the culmination of red flags ignored, opportunities wasted, and a system that failed the one person who needed it most. Before we begin, please be aware this case involves the loss of a young child, and the events are deeply disturbing. If you're new here, welcome. Please subscribe and share where you're watching from. It helps us connect with you. And to our returning viewers, your likes, shares, and comments help these stories reach more people and raise awareness. Octavia Aspen Aquino was born on May 10, 2020, in Fort Wayne, Indiana. From the start, she was the kind of child who drew people in. Bright, social, and quick to make friends, she loved being outdoors and at home, watching her favorite shows like Paw Patrol and My Little Pony. Those close to her remember her as a child who brought energy and joy into every room she entered. Her parents, Destiny Rhodess and Brandon Ano, shared the early years of her life together, but their relationship eventually broke down. Despite being in her mother's legal custody, Octavia spent much of her time with her father's side of the family, especially her grandmother, Linda Alvarez. Linda played a central role in raising her granddaughter, providing stability and consistency during times when her parents' lives were more unsettled. In late 2023, the separation between Destiny and Brandon became permanent. Destiny moved to Evansville, settling into the Spring Valley apartments. She shared the unit with 3 roommates, Carly, Sydney, and Megan, and took a job at a local McDonald's. The arrangement gave her a fresh start, at least on the surface, but it also placed Octavia in a new environment far from the daily oversight of the family members who had cared for her the most. Though the move changed her surroundings, Octavia remained the same lively, affectionate child. She enjoyed her visits with her father and grandmother in Fort Wayne, often spending extended time with them. But her new living situation meant she was now more often in the care of her mother and those sharing the apartment. This was the beginning of a quiet change that would set the stage for the deeply troubling events that followed. In early 2024, a new figure entered the daily life of the Spring Valley apartments. 16-year-old Christian Gonzalez, a teenager from Fort Wayne with a history that should have raised serious concern. Earlier that year, he had been reported missing multiple times. On one occasion, when authorities placed him at the Hillcrest Youth Home for his safety, he left the facility the very same day he was admitted. Court records show that Gonzalez was under a protective order at the time, one that prohibited contact with Destiny Rhodess following allegations involving him and another young individual. This order was meant to keep a distance between the two. Yet within weeks, Gonzalez was not only back in touch with Rhodess, he was living in the same apartment as her and her 4-year-old daughter, Octavia Aspen Aquino. By April 2024, his presence in the household had become a regular fixture. To those outside the home, the situation may have appeared casual, even routine. But behind the closed doors of Spring Valley Apartments, the arrangement was a clear violation of court directives and a warning sign that should have triggered immediate intervention. This is where the systemic gap becomes evident. Law enforcement and juvenile authorities were aware of Gonzalez's runaway status. They had prior knowledge of the protective order, yet no consistent measures were in place to ensure he was kept away from prohibited contacts or vulnerable environments. Each lapse allowed him to remain in proximity to a child he should never have been near. The danger was not hidden in the shadows, it was sitting openly in a shared living space. And like many cases where harm comes from a trusted individual, the threat didn't appear in the form most people expect. Gonzalez was not a stranger nor an unknown figure. He was someone accepted into the home, someone familiar to its occupants. For those who look at cases like this in hindsight, the lesson is both painful and urgent. Danger does not always come from outside the circle of trust. Sometimes it's already inside, and without decisive action, the risk can grow quietly until it's too late. On the morning of June 13, 2024, the Spring Valley Apartments seemed to follow their usual rhythm. Around 11 o'clock a.m., Destiny Rhodess and her roommate Sydney left for their shifts at work, leaving 16-year-old Christian Gonzalez in the apartment with 4-year-old Octavia Aspen Aquino. This was not the first time he had been left in charge. When Sydney returned at approximately 2 p.m., she immediately sensed that something was not right. Octavia wasn't her usual energetic self. Instead, she appeared withdrawn, her focus drifting, almost as if she were disconnected from what was happening around her. Sydney noticed visible signs that caused her concern. Faint discoloration on the child's neck, areas of bruising, and a mark on her arm that resembled a bite. When asked about it, Gonzalez dismissed the injuries with a simple explanation. The cat had done it. It was a story he repeated without hesitation. When Sydney turned to Octavia for her version, the little girl quietly, reluctantly echoed the same words as if rehearsed. Concerned, Sydney and another roommate decided to take Octavia to the McDonald's where Destiny was working. They wanted Destiny to see for herself what they had noticed. In the presence of her mother, Octavia, being away from Gonzalez, revealed the truth. She said Gonzalez was the one who had bitten her. Destiny confronted Gonzalez directly. He admitted to the action, but tried to minimize it, claiming it had been a reaction during play or a way to teach her a lesson. The seriousness of what had been said did not translate into decisive action. No one in that moment called for medical help. No one took Octavia to be examined by a doctor. The signs of possible harm were recognized, discussed, and then left unaddressed. By the next morning, she would be fighting for her life, and no doctor had seen her. On the morning of June 14, 2024, the quiet inside the Spring Valley Apartments was interrupted when Carly, one of Destiny's roommates, came downstairs just after 9 o'clock a.m. She expected the usual sounds of a household starting its day. Instead, she found 4-year-old Octavia Aspen Aquino lying still on a mattress in the living room. Alarmed, Carly quickly called for the others in the apartment. Sydney and Megan rushed in from upstairs. What they saw stopped them in place. Beside Octavia sat 16-year-old Christian Gonzalez, seemingly detached from the urgency of the moment. Instead of showing any sign of action, he remained seated, focused on his phone. Later, investigators would confirm through phone records that during these critical minutes, Gonzalez had been browsing TikTok rather than calling for help. Those moments when immediate aid could have been sought slipped away as he stayed silent. Carly and the others knew something was terribly wrong. Emergency services were immediately called, and within minutes, first responders arrived at the apartment. They moved quickly, assessing Octavia's condition and preparing her for transport. She was rushed to a nearby hospital where medical staff began working to stabilize her. The initial reports from the hospital were grim. Octavia's brain activity was minimal, and the medical team understood the severity of her condition. Efforts continued in the hope of reversing the damage, but the signs pointed to a life-threatening situation. Despite the medical team's efforts, Octavia was pronounced deceased later that day. The loss sent shockwaves through her family and the wider community, turning the investigation into a case of homicide. In the midst of unimaginable grief, her grandmother and father made the decision to donate her organs, a choice that, while heartbreaking, gave other children a chance at life. For them, it was a way to let a part of Octavia's light live on even in the darkest moment. Family continues to grieve. They are also taking time to celebrate Octavia's heroic actions in her final moments. The 4-year-old was honored by family and hospital staff last night as she prepared to give the gift of life. Eyewitness News' Cody Bailey joins us with that story. Cody, it was a quiet, somber, and emotional moment last night in Evansville as Octavia Aquino was escorted by loved ones to the operating room where she would perform one final heroic act as an organ donor. On the 4th floor of Ascension St. Vincent Hospital in Evansville, the family of Octavia Aquino say their goodbyes to a life gone too soon. The 4-year-old girl was found unresponsive with bruising and a human bite mark on her arm last Friday before being declared dead on June 16. We spoke with Octavia's grandmother, Linda Alvarez, on June 17, who described her granddaughter as joyful. She was just a ray of sunshine, like she made everybody happy. Anybody that she encountered she was a joy. On Tuesday night, family members and loved ones took part in Octavia's honor walk, escorting her through the hospital's hallways, lined with staff members and others. That morning's events would later become a central focus for investigators, not only because of the visible urgency when Carly discovered Octavia, but also because of what had not been done in the moments before. The lack of immediate action from Gonzalez, combined with his earlier unsupervised presence in the home, painted a troubling picture of those final hours inside the apartment. Evansville police began their investigation within hours of the 911 call. Officers first secured the apartment and separated everyone present to take individual statements. Destiny Rhodess was interviewed about the events leading up to the emergency. She acknowledged that her daughter had been in the care of Christian Gonzalez the day before, but downplayed concerns about his presence in the home. The 3 roommates, Carly, Sydney, and Megan, each provided their own accounts. Their statements revealed a consistent narrative about what had been seen on June 13, the visible marks on Octavia, her unusual behavior, and the lack of medical attention despite those warning signs. When it came time to question Gonzalez, investigators immediately encountered resistance. He initially gave a false name and an incorrect age, attempting to obscure his identity and juvenile history. It didn't take long for officers to confirm who he was and that he was under a protective order barring contact with Rhodess. Detectives began reconstructing the timeline. They gathered witness statements, pulled text message records, and examined phone logs. The digital evidence confirmed that on the morning of June 14th, during critical minutes when Octavia was in distress, Gonzalez had been casually scrolling through TikTok without a care in the world rather than calling for help. A forensic examination was ordered. The medical findings confirmed that Octavia's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head and neck. The report also documented injuries consistent with what had been observed the day before: the bite mark, the bruising, and the lack of any medical evaluation after those injuries were discovered. For investigators, the evidence told a clear story. Warning signs had been recognized but not acted upon, and the person responsible for her care in those final hours had both a history of disregarding the law and an opportunity to seek help that he did not take. If more people understood how quickly neglect can turn into tragedy, more lives could be saved. Like this video so it reaches people who need to hear it. By the end of June 14, 2024, the investigation had moved swiftly from gathering evidence to making arrests. Detectives, now confident in the timeline and facts, acted on what they had uncovered. Christian Gonzalez was taken into custody that same day. His history with law enforcement, the protective order, and the weight of the evidence made the decision immediate. He was booked into the youth care center in Evansville. The charges filed against him were severe: murder, battery, causing serious bodily injury, and false informing for providing a fake name and age during questioning. Each charge reflected a different layer of what investigators believed had occurred: the fatal act, the prior harm, and the deliberate attempt to mislead authorities. Attention then turned to Destiny Rhodess. The investigation had shown that she was aware of Gonzalez's presence in the home, despite the court order, and that she had been informed of concerning injuries the day before the incident without seeking medical attention. She was arrested and charged with neglect of a dependent resulting in death, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, and invasion of privacy for violating the terms of the protective order. The speed of the arrests sent a clear message. Investigators believed both the direct actions of Gonzalez and the decisions made by Rhodess had led to a preventable tragedy. These initial charges would set the stage for a legal process that promised to be as closely watched as it was deeply unsettling. The legal process for this case moved forward quickly, reflecting both the seriousness of the charges and the strength of the evidence gathered by investigators. For Christian Gonzalez, the path to trial began almost immediately after his arrest. The prosecution presented a case centered on his actions in the hours leading up to the emergency, the opportunities to seek help that he did not take, and the fact that he was in a position of responsibility over a young child despite a protective order. Witness testimony, digital evidence, and prior incidents were all used to build a timeline that prosecutors argued left no doubt about his culpability. On January 10, 2025, the jury returned its verdict. Gonzalez was convicted of murder. Sentencing took place on February 21, 2025, with Judge Robert J. Pigman presiding, citing aggravating factors, the victim's young age, and Gonzalez's role as a trusted caregiver. At the time, the judge imposed a 60-year prison sentence. In addition, Gonzalez was ordered to register as a violent offender, a designation intended to follow him long after his prison term. Prosecutor Diana Moores emphasized that the sentence reflected not only the crime itself, but the calculated decisions that allowed it to happen. Trial is underway for an Evansville teenager accused of murder in the case of 4-year-old Octavia Aquino. Christian Gonzalez's trial was set to begin on Monday, but was postponed due to the winter storm. Gonzalez is being tried as an adult in Aquino's murder last June. Evansville police say they found Aquino unresponsive at the Spring Valley Flats apartment complex. She was taken to the hospital and died 2 days later. Authorities say this is a case of extreme neglect and believe Gonzalez is responsible for her death. Octavia's mother, Destiny Rhodess, is also being charged in her death. Her trial begins in March. Destiny Rhodess faced a different legal outcome. After months of proceedings on August 7, 2025, she entered a guilty plea to neglect of a dependent resulting in death. As part of the plea agreement, the other charges against her, contributing to the delinquency of a minor and invasion of privacy, were dismissed. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the final 5 years to be served as non-reporting probation. These court decisions marked the conclusion of the criminal process, delivering formal accountability for both the direct actions of Gonzalez and the omissions by Rhodess that prosecutors argued made the tragedy possible. Cases like this force communities to confront an uncomfortable truth. The warning signs of a child in danger are often visible long before a crisis occurs. They can appear in subtle changes in behavior, a child who was once active and talkative becoming withdrawn, hesitant to play, or showing sudden mood swings. They can also be physical, unexplained marks, signs of exhaustion, or a general decline in well-being. These signals should never be dismissed as minor or temporary, because for some children they are the only way they can communicate that something is wrong. Acting on these signs does not require absolute certainty. The role of the community is not to investigate or prove wrongdoing, but to ensure concerns are placed in the hands of professionals who can. Reporting a suspicion, even if it later turns out to be unfounded, is far less harmful than remaining silent when intervention could save a life. This case also highlights the importance of setting and maintaining clear boundaries. When someone outside the immediate family is living in a home with children, a parent or guardian should remain aware of the dynamics, routines, and time the child spends with that individual and ensure that trust is paired with oversight. The responsibility to protect children extends beyond parents alone. Neighbors, friends, extended family members, and even casual acquaintances can play a role in safeguarding a child's welfare. When each person in a community accepts that vigilance is part of their duty, children are less likely to slip through the cracks created by isolation or indifference. Prevention is not a single action. It is a culture built on awareness, communication, and the willingness to speak up. Recognizing the signs, acting without delay, setting healthy boundaries, and fostering a protective network are not just best practices, they are necessary safeguards. In the end, the difference between tragedy and safety can come down to one person choosing to act. Octavia's case stands as a stark reminder of how betrayal of trust can occur within the very spaces meant to offer safety. The lack of enforcement of a protective order, the missed opportunities for intervention by those in her immediate environment, and the absence of a medical assessment when warning signs were present all combined to create a fatal chain of events. These were preventable failures, not of one moment, but of multiple moments where action could have changed the outcome. Octavia's story is a call to act, not to look away. If you believe change starts with awareness, subscribe and share this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. After hearing this story, how do you feel about the fact that so many people saw signs of trouble but didn't act until it was too late? If you were in a similar situation, what would you do or what action would you take to ensure a child's safety? Share your thoughts and let's discuss what we can all do to prevent a tragedy like this from happening again.